They say love finds you when you least expect it, but no one warns you what to do when it leaves you breathless, shaken, and questioning everything you thought you knew. This is the story of a single night that rewrote the rules of my heart and taught me that the deepest connections come in the most unexpected ways. I always told myself I was fine on my own, 32, single, and content, or at least that's what I'd convinced myself. My life was orderly, predictable, and wrapped neatly in the protective bubble I'd built over the years. My daily routine was so structured it felt like clockwork. Wake up at 6:30 a.m., squeeze in a workout, coffee at my favorite cafe by 8, and then head to work where I drowned myself in spreadsheets, deadlines, and client calls. My evenings were just as predictable. A glass of Merlot, Netflix on autoplay, and me, curled up on my worn leather couch, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. I liked it that way, or at least I thought I did. My friends joked that I'd become a hermit with Wi-Fi. Anna, my best friend since college, was the loudest voice of dissent. She had this unrelenting belief that I just needed to put myself out there again, as if dating were a switch I could simply turn back on after years of being burned. "Claire," she said one Saturday over brunch, her hands animated as usual. "You're too young to act like you're retired. You need to stop hiding." "I'm not hiding," I shot back, sipping my mimosa for emphasis. "You're absolutely hiding," she said, crossing her arms. "And you know what? You're coming to my housewarming party next weekend. No excuses." I groaned. Anna's parties were legendary, but not in a way that suited me. They were always packed with people, brimming with energy I couldn't muster. But saying no to Anna was like arguing with a hurricane. "Fine," I said, finally relenting, "but I'm leaving by 10. She smirked. "We'll see about that." The night of Anna's party arrived, and I'd already rehearsed 100 ways to make my escape. I arrived fashionably late, as always, hoping to blend into the crowd unnoticed. The apartment was buzzing with life. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. I found my spot against the wall, wine glass in hand, scanning the room for Anna. That's when I saw him. He was leaning casually against the balcony railing, talking to a group of people, his dark eyes lighting up as he laughed. There was something magnetic about him, something that made it impossible to look away. Anna noticed me staring and wasted no time. "Claire, meet Alex," she said, pulling me into their circle. "Hi," he said, his voice warm and smooth, like the first sip of coffee on a cold morning. "Hi," I replied, trying not to sound breathless. Anna grinned and disappeared, leaving us alone. We talked for hours, or at least it felt that way. The world around us blurred, the party fading into the background. Alex wasn't like anyone I'd met before. He had a way of making every word feel significant, every question feel sincere. He asked about my job, my hobbies, my life, but not in the usual surface-level way. He wanted to know what made me tick, what scared me, what I dreamed about when no one was looking. I found myself telling him things I hadn't shared with anyone in years, about my failed engagement, the walls I'd built since, and the gnawing fear that maybe I was too much for anyone to love. When I finally stopped talking, expecting awkward silence, he just nodded. "That must have been hard," he said softly, "but it sounds like you've come out stronger." Stronger. The word hit me like a jolt. No one had ever described me like that. The music hummed softly in the background, just audible enough to thread its way through the laughter and clinking glasses from the living room. Alex extended his hand, his dark eyes glittering with something I couldn't quite place. An invitation, a challenge, a promise? "Dance with me," he said, his voice low but playful. "I told you I don't dance," I replied, smiling but shaking my head. His grin widened, mischievous and warm. "Good. Then you'll have no bad habits to break." Before I could protest, he took my hand. His touch was steady, firm, yet gentle, sending a spark up my arm. He led me onto the balcony where the city sprawled out before us in a symphony of twinkling lights. The air was cool, crisp, wrapping around us like a whisper. There was no music out here, just the faint hum of life below, But that didn't seem to matter. Alex rested his hand lightly on my waist, and I placed mine on his shoulder. Our movements were awkward at first, a slow sway that wasn't really a dance at all. "This is ridiculous," I said, laughing softly. "Ridiculous can be good," he replied, his voice close to my ear. Something shifted then. The laughter faded, replaced by a quiet intensity. The city seemed to blur into the background as we moved, our steps becoming smoother, more natural. His hand on my waist tightened ever so slightly, drawing me closer, and I felt the warmth of his breath against my cheek. I looked up at him, and for a moment the world stopped. There was something in his eyes, something raw, unguarded, and entirely real. "You're beautiful," he said, so softly it was almost a whisper. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Instead, I let myself lean into the moment, letting go of the fear that had always kept me at arm's length. The party dwindled as the hours slipped by, but Alex and I lingered on the balcony, reluctant to break the spell. Eventually, he walked me home. The streets were quiet, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, and the conversation flowed easily, like we'd known each other for years. When we reached my apartment building, we paused at the steps. "This is me," I said, suddenly nervous. Alex hesitated, his gaze searching mine. "I don't want this night to end," he said. "Me neither," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. And then he kissed me. It was slow, deliberate, and so breathtakingly tender that it felt like the world had tilted on its axis. His hand cupped my cheek, his thumb brushing softly against my skin, and I felt myself melt into him. Before I knew it, we were inside my apartment, the door clicking shut behind us. The air was charged, electric, but there was no rush. Alex moved like he had all the time in the world, his touch unhurried and reverent, as though he were memorizing every detail. He kissed my forehead, my cheek, the corner of my mouth, each touch igniting a fire that burned through every wall I'd spent years building. When we finally reached the bedroom, it wasn't just physical, it was something deeper, something that felt like being truly seen for the first time in years. We spent the night tangled together, exploring each other with an intimacy that felt both thrilling and terrifying. In his arms, I let myself be vulnerable, letting go of the armor I'd worn for so long. The sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room. I woke to find Alex already awake, his arm draped lazily across my waist as he traced small circles on my back. "Good morning," he said, his voice thick with sleep. "Morning," I replied, smiling as I stretched. We spent the weekend in a bubble of bliss, shutting out the world and losing ourselves in each other. We cooked breakfast together, laughing as he burned the toast, and spent hours talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his love for photography, his dream of traveling the world, and the book he'd been working on for years but never finished. I told him about my love for painting, how I'd given it up after my last heartbreak, and the part of me that was too afraid to try again. "You should," he said, his eyes locking onto mine. "You're too passionate not to." By Monday morning, I felt like a new person. But when I woke up, he was gone. I found the note on the kitchen counter, scrawled in his familiar handwriting. "I'm sorry I couldn't stay. You're incredible, but there are things I can't explain. Please don't think this was meaningless. It wasn't." I stared at the note, my chest tightening with a mix of confusion and hurt. The days after Alex disappeared were like walking through a fog. Everything reminded me of him. The corner cafe where we lingered for hours, the park bench where he teased me for my mismatched socks, even the scent of his cologne that somehow lingered in my apartment. I couldn't stop replaying the weekend in my mind, analyzing every word, every look, every touch. I wondered what I'd missed, what I could have done differently to make him stay. It was as if he had left behind a question I didn't know how to answer, and the silence was unbearable. I searched for him in small ways. I scrolled through social media endlessly, hoping to stumble across something, anything, that might explain why he left. I walked through the places we had been together, my heart sinking every time I realized he wasn't there. But he was nowhere to be found. At night, the weight of his absence was suffocating. I wanted to be angry, to hate him for leaving, but the truth was more complicated. He hadn't just been a fleeting romance. He had been a glimpse of something I hadn't known I was missing. And now, I was left to grapple with the question I had been avoiding for years. Why had I built my life to be so guarded? Why was it so hard for me to let someone in, and even harder to let them go? Months passed, and the raw ache began to dull, though it never truly disappeared. I tried to move on, burying myself in work, but the memories lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. One evening, as I scrolled absent-mindedly through Instagram, a name caught my eye. Alex. My breath caught in my throat as I clicked on his profile. There he was, the same warm smile, the same sparkling eyes. My chest tightened as I scrolled through his feed. Picture after picture of his life unfolded before me, a life I had never been a part of. And then I saw it. It was a photo of Alex, a woman, and a little boy. They were sitting on a park bench, the boy perched on his lap while the woman leaned against him with a weary but contented smile. The caption read, "Grateful for my family every day." My stomach dropped. My heart raced. He had a family. My anger surged like a wave, crashing over me with its raw intensity. How could he have done this? How could he have looked me in the eye, touched me the way he did, knowing he had a wife and child waiting for him? But then, I looked closer. The woman's face was pale, her head wrapped in a scarf. She looked ill, frail. And the boy, he couldn't have been more than 6. My anger gave way to something else. Understanding, heartbreak, compassion. Alex wasn't running from me. He was running toward them, toward a life that demanded his love and presence in a way I couldn't compete with. But that didn't excuse what he had done. He had made a choice to betray his wife, to pull me into something I didn't consent to. And as much as I wanted to understand, I couldn't forgive him, not fully. I closed the app and put my phone down, my hands trembling. I realized then that Alex wasn't the answer to the questions I had been asking. He was just a part of the journey. In the months that followed, I focused on myself in a way I never had before. I dove headfirst into my career, taking on challenging projects that pushed me out of my comfort zone. I started volunteering at a nonprofit that supported cancer patients, channeling my pain into something meaningful. Through therapy, I began to unpack the layers of my heartbreak. Not just from Alex, but from years of walls I had built around myself. I learned to forgive, not for his sake, but for mine. It wasn't easy. Some days, the weight of it all felt unbearable. But little by little, I started to rediscover the parts of myself I had lost. I reconnected with old friends, took a solo trip to the mountains, and even signed up for a cooking class, though I burned the first 3 dishes. And somewhere along the way, I realized that Alex wasn't the end of my story. He was a chapter, a lesson, a reminder of what it meant to open my heart, even if it hurt. Today, I'm stronger, more confident, and more at peace with myself than I've ever been. My career has flourished. I'm now the director of marketing at a tech company, leading a team of creative minds and loving every moment of it. I've also found love again, but this time it's different. It's not about grand gestures or whirlwind romances. It's about partnership, trust, and building something real. His name is Daniel, and he's kind, patient, and unafraid of the scars I carry. Sometimes I think back to that night with Alex. I wonder if he ever thinks about me, if he regrets the choices he made. But those thoughts don't consume me anymore. Alex taught me that love is complicated, messy, and sometimes painful, but he also taught me that I'm capable of feeling deeply, of opening myself up to the possibility of connection. I've learned that life isn't about finding someone to complete you. It's about becoming whole on your own, and then sharing that wholeness with someone else. They say love finds you when you least expect it. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes love doesn't stay. And that's okay. Because every love, no matter how fleeting, leaves you stronger than it found you. What about you? Have you ever experienced a love that changed you, even if it didn't last? Or a moment that taught you more about yourself than you ever thought possible? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Together, let's explore more stories that shatter our hearts and build us back stronger. And remember, love doesn't have to last forever to change us forever.